Welcome to the Catch Up with Claire. I'm your host, Claire Hoon, and today we are catching up with Yelena. Yelena and I met at an event in Washington, D.C. called Mom Congress, hosted by the nonprofit 2020 Mom. Their whole mission is improving maternal health outcomes, and we were there to talk to congressional leaders about laws and protections for pregnant and birthing people. It was just the beginning of our friendship, and we've since bonded over the ups and downs of motherhood, raising our families in New York City, and running. When we recorded this, Yelena had just completed her second marathon, but what I really wanted to talk with her about was her journey through secondary infertility. I so appreciate how vulnerable Yelena was and being willing to share her story as she's going through it. As you'll hear, she's very much in the middle of her journey. If you're going through it too, I hope you know, as isolating as it might feel, you're never going through it alone. I hope you enjoy this episode with Yelena. Yelena, welcome to the Catch Up with Claire.
Hi, how are you?
It's so good to see you. This is such a treat. Thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited about our conversation today because there are so many topics we're going to hit on. But I want to start off with letting you introduce yourself in your own words.
All right, so I'm Yelena Sturkalo. I am a mom of one. I have a boy, and I live in Brooklyn. I'm a runner. Actually, really inspired by Claire, by you. Claire and I have a few things in common, which, sort of connect us how we met, and we'll talk about that. I'm really excited to be here.
I think that's a great starting off point. Okay, so we met at an event in Washington, D.C. called Mom Congress. Mom Congress is an annual event hosted by a nonprofit called 2020 Mom. Their whole mission is really supporting parents, but especially mothers. So all throughout the perinatal period, from pregnancy to postpartum, really focused on maternal health outcomes and maternal mental health outcomes. So we share a story, having suffered from postpartum depression, found this organization, and basically the Mom Congress event that they host every year is anyone who wants to go advocate to our congressional leadership about the importance of legislation to support mothers. And that can look like many different things. That can look like, again, the healthcare that we receive, the requirements for healthcare while you're pregnant or postpartum, paid leave, all sort of things, decreasing the disparities in healthcare between women of color, all sorts of things that Mom Congress helps advocate for. So I'm curious to hear how you found Mom Congress. I first went in 2019. I found them how I found everything, which is via Instagram. At the time, I had just come out of a very long period of postpartum depression and was ready to sort of be like, not on my watch.
Right.
No one, I don't want anyone else to go through this. I was taken so off guard. I need to use this experience for good now, and I wanted to make a change. And so I went down to DC. I met some incredible women there. It was a very powerful experience being able to tell your story to, again, our government officials and say, hey, we can and should be doing better by moms, and this is why, and this is how. And obviously, the pandemic happened, and they brought it back in person in 2022, and
Right.
that's where we met. How
Yeah.
did you
Yes.
find it?
So it's kind of similar to you, right? I was at the tail end of postpartum depression, and I just had this urgent need to do something about it. I was like, I didn't suffer to just for it to kind of go nowhere. I really wanted to do something and get involved in any way I could. So I remember I was getting a pedicure, and I was like on Google searching mom advocacy organizations, and they came up, and I looked through, and it was really like aligned with what I was looking for. Once you sign up, you get their emails, and I saw the event, and I was like, I did not know a single person who was going.
Same.
I just went by myself, but I knew I needed to do something to make meaning out of the really hard and really long suffering that, we both endured. And yeah, it was like, I can't wait to go back. Like, I really definitely want to go back.
How did you find it being the first time, sort of expectations of what you were looking for? I went for the first time. I knew no one, and obviously had a really positive experience because I went back.
So, I mean, I was a little nervous at first because, like,
Mhm.
when you don't know somebody, but I think within, like, walking into I think we had, like, a happy hour meet and greet and just immediately, like, talking to people. Everybody there is there for the same purpose. So you're in the room with like-minded people, people who are either, you know, on the advocacy side or people who, like us, went through it. And so it was easy to talk to and connect with people. And I remember how we met, we were doing some kind of activity where we were asked to sit with people from our state because there were people from all over. And I think it was just you and me from New York State.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And then when I found out you run marathons, I was like, oh, because I had just started running. I was like, oh, you are, yes, like you are the person I need to stick with.
I feel like we clicked immediately, but I feel like it's the definition of put moms in charge because, again, like you, the first year I was very nervous. I don't do anything alone.
Right.
I'm very uncomfortable with small talk, and especially going into a situation where the point is for advocacy because of something very, very dark that we went through. I didn't know what I was stepping into, but I feel like the activities they had set up to just really, one, facilitate deeper conversation very quickly, and two, disarm everyone. I remember the first year at the happy hour event, the social, they had different color ribbons for an experience you've been through. So if you had
Okay.
postpartum depression, it was like a blue ribbon. If you had postpartum anxiety, it was a green ribbon. If you lost a baby, had a miscarriage or a stillborn, it was a yellow ribbon, different colors for each experience. And so you tied the ribbon to your badge. It was a statement, like wearing it, of what I've been through, a visual. So people that you met could be like, we both share green, we both had depression, or we both share these colors, we both went through this. And I just feel like it was so thoughtful and such a thoughtful way to be able to sort of have the visual of like, we can either say
Yeah.
this out loud or we can make eye contact and just sort of know. Because
Yeah.
when you go through something like that, and I think, again, this is why we connected so quickly, is we both know. Like, we can
Right.
explain and we can talk about how our postpartum depression presented and the experience, but we don't need to because it's a unique feeling, you know?
Right.
Um,
100%. Yeah, you don't need to have all of the words to express what you went through because you know exactly. When you speak with somebody who has never gone through something like that, it can be harder, and I find that people don't always know what to say, not because they're not thoughtful or because they don't wanna be comforting, but they just don't know. They don't know, how to help or what to say, and I get it. So it was really great to be in a room with people who got it.
and then also the advocacy side of it, of being able to talk to congressional leaders and say,
Right.
this needs to change. We need to do better. Moms
Yeah.
deserve better. Parents deserve better. Babies deserve better. It's powerful. And I know they, because of a lot of changes in the government this year, they postponed it. So I do
Yeah.
hope that they bring it back because we connected, and I met some incredible women in 2019, and even the women that I think I'll both keep in touch with from the 2022 event.
Right.
There's some really powerful things that can happen from that.
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, so we also connected because of running.
Yes.
I've always been a runner. You were just getting into running. Talk to me about running and what that's done for you. Because I remember, I don't want to tell the story for you, but I know that that has really helped you and something you found as an outlet postpartum.
Yeah, so I was never a runner outside of, high school gym, and I started I started therapy for postpartum depression. It was, like, December 20th, 2019. The first thing she said in that appointment was, "Yelena, you need to start some kind of physical movement, whether running or something that's going to help you feel better, that's gonna release endorphins, in addition to therapy and everything else." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds good." Totally ignored it, though, because one thing that's really hard when you are going through something like depression is to fully commit to the things that will make you better. Like, when you're in it, it is really hard to be like, "Yeah, let me go for a run." Like, that's really hard to do, and I remember, even then COVID started and my husband started running. He became a runner and he was doing it regularly, and he would be like, "Well, why don't you come for a run?" And I was like, "Never. Oh, I hate it. Never. Not gonna do it." So I went through therapy for a year and a half. The first year was like every week, and then it was like every other week. And then, my therapist like said I graduated, like my house was no longer on fire. I was pretty stable. I was feeling better, but I still had a lot of really bad days where, you wake up and you're feeling low and you're like, oh no, is the depression coming back? Right? Like,
Mhm.
is this
Mhm.
is this it again? And you get really nervous, and that became really tiring after a while. So one August morning, I woke up and I was like, I need to do something different. Put on a pair of sneakers. They did not they were not running sneakers. They were not running shoes at all. Like they were probably too small on me. But I put them on and I ran around our block. And of course, I did all the wrong things. I ran out too fast. I wasn't hydrated. I wasn't stretched. So I lasted about a block, but something clicked and it made me feel really proud of myself in that moment. And I realized, like, maybe I can do this. Right. So I downloaded an app, Couch to 5K, and I started following it. And, it took me a month to run a mile without stopping. My husband had to coach me through that first mile. But that feeling of being proud of myself for doing this, that feeling of like, I never thought I could do this, but here I am doing it. It it was so strong that it really, like, whatever valleys I still faced, it pushed me out. And I could honestly say that running was that thing that I needed to fully push me out of the postpartum depression and anxiety. And I still have bad days. Like, we all have bad days, and we'll talk
Mhm.
about my current situation. And um but running, like, it really changed the course of my life, and it gave me something to look forward to. And with running, right, there's always a new distance you could take on, there's always a new pace you could chase, and so there's always something to work towards. You're never fully done, and I think that was really, really good for me to have something to look forward to. And the other thing, like, with becoming a mom, something that I really struggled with was just this shift in identity. Like, who am I? Right? Like, okay, I'm a mom, but who else am I? And now I was able to add runner, right, to my identity. And that made me feel really, really good. And so, still running, hopefully, will never stop.
Okay, let's just pause on that because you were saying you ran a block and then ran a mile, took a month. Tell everyone what you just did not 3 weeks ago.
I ran and finished the TCS New York City Marathon.
Yes,
This is
you
my
did.
Yeah, and I saw you, and oh yeah, we got to talk about like what you said. It really made a difference. This was my third one, and I had surgery 10 weeks prior. And so this marathon was, my only goal was to finish because the longest training run I had was 10 miles. So I knew once I got to 10 miles on the course, anything else after was just a gift. And so it was, every time I cross the finish line, it's just such a humbling, but like empowering feeling of I'm actually really strong and I could face and do the things that I need to. And even though it doesn't always feel good, it doesn't always feel like I'm going to get to the finish, I know that I will because I've done it before.
Mhm. I think that's what I love so much about running is the parallels to life, and especially I found without fail, you are not the same person who you are when you cross the start line as you are when you cross the finish line. And there's something, it's a gift that you give yourself. And 26.2 miles is a long way. But you do it. You find some, you dig into something, you tap into something and you do it. You rely
Yeah.
on the physical training, you rely on the mental training, you rely on bringing every fiber of your being to get there and accomplish something. And yes, things happen and people get injured and you have to drop out. And of course that happens. But when you finish, the experience of who you are, like that's part of why I'm so addicted to the distance and why I'm so itchy to get back to running this round postpartum is because it's that thing that I miss of
Yeah.
the process of becoming, the process of understanding, the process of and I feel like when you're chasing something physically hard just for yourself, that also, like, let's be honest, it doesn't matter. We are never going to win a World Magic Marathon. We are never going to be getting any prize money. This is just something that we are doing for ourselves,
Yeah.
but it makes anything else you face in life easier. For me, it does,
Yes.
because it's like I have already if I can go out when it is 32 degrees and might flurry and I don't want to, but I have to complete this training run and I have to do my speed work because I set this goal for myself. I'm not going to let myself down in that way and I'm going to go out there do there. That's not fun. I find fun
Right.
in it and I find fun in the challenge of it, but the act of being outside and cold and miserable and out of breath and physical discomfort, that's not fun. But the reward and I think, like, the delayed gratification aspect of it, like, we are such a dopamine hit society that the delayed gratification of 18 weeks, 16 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever you spend
Right.
training and you get that, you just really can't describe that feeling until you experience it.
Right.
I am a firm believer anyone can run a marathon. It is a
I
plan, it is a formula. If
Yeah.
you the hardest part is committing.
Yes. But it gives you a like discipline that then transfers to other parts of your life. And so, like you said, if I can go out at 6 a.m., right, in the summer to go for a run and I do, let's say, 10 miles, I've already accomplished the hardest part of that day. So anything else after that, yeah, I can face whatever, right? And so it gives you this discipline. It also like forces you to hydrate, which makes your body feel good. You would then want to get more sleep because you want to be refreshed for a run. So that's good for you. You're eating probably a little bit better because you need to fuel yourself. So all of these things, it isn't just the running, it's like everything else that goes into it that
Mhm.
only does good for you. I think that's my thing is like if I could run a marathon, anybody can.
The habits that you just keep stacking.
The one thing about the New York City Marathon is the crowds are like nonstop from the moment you get off Arizona Bridge through the end. And it's amazing. It's overwhelming as well. And
Mhm.
it's just loud and it's so much. And it
It's
can be
very
hard.
stimulating.
It's very stimulating, right? And so by the time I got to you, like my knee was starting to get sore and I was feeling really tired. Again, like I only had 10-mile run as my longest run this time around. Like I did IVF in the summer, I did surgery. I wasn't allowed to run. And so when I got to you, I was like questioning all of my life decisions. And you said, "This is hard. You're doing something really, really hard. But you got this." And that was a reminder to myself, I'm feeling tired because this is really hard. This is a lot. Like what I'm doing is actually really hard. You're right. It was a good reminder. And I was like, but I can do it. And so I just like left and I was like crying ugly tears running after because it was just, I felt like I needed that reset. And it was a great reset for the remaining miles because, 17 is still, you already did 17, but you still have like 9
It's
to
not
go.
close. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not close. So, yeah, after that, I was just like, yeah, I got this. Like, I know I got this. And I did. And it was, every marathon day is like the best day ever.
It truly is. It's the best day in New York City by far. Well, I'm glad it was helpful. I feel like sometimes we have this expectation that, like, we did all the work, and so it's gonna be, like, it's easy. Like, no, it's never like, I have to remind myself of that, especially when you get to, like, the high teens and low 20s, like, yeah, you've already run 17 miles, but you still have 9 to go. That's not an
Yeah.
instant you're not close.
Yeah.
People are like,
Yeah.
"You've made it 20." Like, no, it's you got an hour of running still. Um,
Right.
but I think it's that reminder of like, okay, let it be hard. You can do hard things. You can finish hard
Yeah.
things. You can do it while it's hard. You've already done so much. But I
Yeah.
think I want to pivot to what I really want to talk to you about because you've confided a lot and shared a lot with me about what you're going through on the journey to baby number two. I know so many women in my life are going through IVF, and I swear not a single one has the same story. I think that there's just not enough talked about around IVF, around the challenges that can happen in getting pregnant, and especially for you, secondary infertility and the challenges that you're having right now. I so admire how you've used your Instagram platform to talk about this because until you shared with me, I mean, I still can't even pronounce the word that you're about to tell us about. But I've never even heard of it. And I think the more that we can share the experience of what we're going through, and you're so willing to be so open and vulnerable as you're going through it, um, I know that what you're doing is going to help other women and help other people who are struggling with similar things. So you had your son 6 years ago,
Yeah, 6.5. Yeah. Yeah,
six
yeah.
and a half years ago.
2019. Hmm.
Um, Talk to me about the process of number 2, and I'll leave it there for you to share.
Okay. So, yeah. So, my son was born in 2019. And, you know, I come from a large family. I'm one of 7. My husband is one of 8. Right. So there's a lot of, we're big family people. And in my mind, I thought like 3 to 4, it would be great. And, so, we had our first son, and there was definitely birth trauma. There were some things that happened. Um, and then the postpartum depression. But even through that, I was like, no, we gotta do this. Like, kind of like, I'm going through a really hard time right now. Let's just have another so that we could go through it all at once and then be done with it. So we were trying, I guess, like a year out, and then nothing was happening. And so, after I think it was like 6 months of trying, I went to my OBGYN, the one who delivered my son, and I shared with him like we were trying for another baby. I wasn't getting pregnant, and at that time he did a blood test to check like my thyroids and my hormones, and he did say like, "Oh, your hormone levels aren't ideal." So in my mind, I was like, "Okay, so we maybe just have to try longer, whatever." But like nothing happened until my son was 4. We were not using any form of birth control, and, there were times where I was like, well, if it happens, it happens. But if it's not going to happen, it's fine, because my husband changed his career and became a firefighter. And that was really hard. And having another baby right now would be really, really hard. So if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, it's okay. And yeah, when he was around 4, I got back on birth control because I was like, what? Actually, things are really easy right now. It
Mm,
hasn't happened yet. Maybe it's not meant to be. And so I was like, maybe we'll be a one-child family, and that's okay. But it wouldn't leave my mind. Like, we wanted to have another. And at this point, our son really started asking for a sibling, like to the
mm,
point where he would have a play date with a friend who had a sibling, and he'd see them together and he'd start crying. And he would say, like, I
aw,
want a brother or a sister. And there were times I've had to leave a play date because he was so distraught. He just wanted a sibling. And he would say things like, Mommy, do you want another puppy or a baby? Because I want a baby. And, so again,
that's hard.
it was, and it's so I knew that we weren't finished. And my husband and I started joking around that if I finished the marathon last year in 2024, we'll start trying. It'll be like our marathon baby. But I got off birth control before that, and we started trying. And in my mind, I thought it would happen really quickly. The amount of pregnancy tests that I bought every month, I was like
Mhm.
testing. And those few seconds before you get the result, I would imagine like our life with 2 kids, and then for it to be squashed. And so it just didn't happen. And so I ended up switching my OBGYN because mine moved to a different state. But also I felt like up until that point, I had been complaining to him that my menstrual cycle completely changed. It was very different, like it didn't feel normal to me, and it was sort of dismissed. And so I felt like maybe I need to go somewhere else because I was feeling like I wasn't really being heard. I switched and I got a new OBGYN in March of this past year. And so I shared with her about my menstrual cycle, and we've been trying basically for 5 years on and off, and I'm not getting pregnant, and we're healthy otherwise.
Mhm.
And so she kind of told me, she was like, you need to go see a fertility specialist or reproductive endocrinologist. Like, you're 38. I was 38 at the time. You've been trying for over 6 months. Like, you need to go. And so we went in May, and I learned so much about just maternal health education is so lacking in our country. It's a whole
Yes.
nother story, but
Yes.
um, it really is. And so our third appointment, we were doing, we did a saline infused sonogram, which, you know, makes your uterus bigger with the saline, and then they're able to see if there are any issues. And as I'm on that exam table, she's like looking at the screen, and I'm like, oh, how is it looking? She's like, everything looks great, except I'm really, really worried about how your C-section scar healed. And this is, like, it was like a ice bucket was thrown on me, and I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, your C-section scar healed with a defect. It's called an isthmocele, also known as a niche sometimes. She said, and it can cause infertility. And I was shocked. I had never heard that a C-section can cause infertility, right? Like, I had an unplanned C-section, and I
Oh, I
was
didn't
told
realize that
about,
part.
oh,
It was
really?
unplanned.
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah. It was not a planned C-section. It was not an emergency C-section, but it wasn't planned. And, so I knew that after a C-section, like, your uterus is thinner, there's more chance of a rupture. That we know, right? I had no clue that a C-section can cause infertility. And so, at that appointment, I'm like, so what does this mean? And I'm like, well, so what happens next? And she's like, well, I can't tell you what happens next. She's like, this is very serious. And I have to talk to the other physicians in the practice because this is a multi-physician conversation.
Oh,
And you don't
wow.
want to hear that. Like, nobody
No.
wants to hear that.
So that was a lot of news to hear at once.
Yes. So, and she was like, we'll be in touch with the next steps. You'll hear from us soon. And I go out in the
And this was
lobby,
all in your
and
this was all in your first appointment?
no, this was like second or third appointment.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Because at first they do blood work to, they do like the lighter stuff first.
I see.
And
Okay.
then they do like, they check your fallopian tubes next to make sure there's no blockage. And then they check the uterus. And that's when this was discovered. So I go out in the lobby, and my husband was waiting there, and I just like sit down, put my head in his lap, and I just start like ugly crying because I'm like, just so shocked, right? Like,
Hmm.
how is it that I had a C-section and nobody told me? And so at first, my first thought is like, well, there was some kind of malpractice involved, right? Like, my C-section was done incorrectly. Something must have happened for this to occur. So the next things that happened were, she shared the scans with me and recommended that I go meet with a MFM, which is a maternal fetal medicine doctor. So they specialize in like high risk pregnancies. And so I met with the MFM, who I absolutely love. And she was like, oh yeah, like, I saw the image and I was like, whoa, like, this is big. And so she was very concerned. The biggest concerns at this point were that the C-section scar defect left my uterus very, very thin. It was about 1 millimeter thin. Usually you want like 5 to 10.
Oh, wow.
Um, so, to avoid a rupture with a second pregnancy. So my uterus at the site of the incision was like extremely thin. So the risk of a rupture was very high. And then the other thing she was very worried about is a cesarean scar ectopic pregnancy, which is different than an ectopic pregnancy, because a cesarean scar ectopic pregnancy, it it's when the embryo implants in the actual scar, and because there's a defect, there's like a hole, there's a higher chance of it implanting in the hole. And she said at that point, women die from childbirth like rarely, but this is one of the reasons. She then referred me to a surgeon who specializes in minimally invasive surgeries of this kind. And so at this point, again, it was not 100% confirmed that it was the cause of my infertility, and I'll get to that. But he said, even if I could get pregnant, I should not, because my uterus was so thin that for me to have any chance of a safe pregnancy, I needed to have surgery. So at this point, I couldn't even pursue anything without surgery because it's so risky. And so, he said, if you want, you can start IVF, even though the surgery technically would fix if the infertility portion, if it was the cause of my infertility. But I could do IVF because my age, right? After surgery, I'd still have to wait 6 months before I could even try to conceive again. And I'm 39 at this point, and because of my age, like, they're recommending doing IVF to have some.
What would the surgery fix if it were the cause of the infertility?
So it's two things. It's to thicken your uterus, and it's to also like close that gap, because the
I
isthmus seal
see.
really is like, it's like a hole. And so it collects things in it. And um so during that a consultation with the surgeon, you know, he confirmed for me that when I was complaining to my OBGYN that my period was significantly changed, like, what happened was I would have my cycle, it'd start, and then it would stop for like a day, and then it would come back again lighter. And he was like, that's like the number one sign that you have a
Hmm.
C-section scar defect, because what's happening is that hole, that niche is collecting the liquid. So then it stops the flow. And then a few days later, it kind of trickles out. And
Wow.
so he was like, yeah, that, unfortunately, a lot of OBGYNs and other doctors outside of like a specialist just aren't trained to know this,
Hmm.
right? So I knew I needed to have surgery, and we decided to do IVF. And the number one reason is because we found out my health insurance covers it. So it covered IVF 100%. We paid out of pocket for, the copays and things like that, but it covered it 100%. And so, like, we went into this thinking we would never do IVF because this felt so out of, like, it's just so expensive.
Hmm.
I had no clue that New York State passed a law in 2020 requiring that large insurance carriers cover up to 3 rounds of IVF. There's some insurance will make you do like a IUI first and take some other measures before they cover IVF, but they will cover IVF. Everything happened so quickly, right? We decided to do IVF, and then 2 weeks later we were doing it. So there was no time to really like think about it, really know what it means. It was like, okay, we're going to do it. And then I scheduled my surgery, and surgery was in August. So during the course of IVF, we got the confirmation that the defect actually did cause infertility, because while you're doing IVF, you go in for a lot of monitoring. They do a lot of
Hmm.
sonograms, and they're checking your uterus nonstop every day for 2 weeks. And in one of the scans, they saw liquid in my uterus. So what that means is that niche, that little hole, was trapping liquid. And then at some point during my cycle, it was releasing it into my uterus. And liquid in your uterus makes it almost impossible for an embryo to implant itself or to even thrive, to survive. It creates a toxic environment. So these are all things that I'm learning in bits and pieces along the way, as I'm still trying to grapple with, like, but how did this happen?
Right.
Was this malpractice? Like, I'm still not understanding how it happened. And
You're
it turns
in
out,
real time trying to process the emotional side of it and what am I doing, but also not fighting the clock and wanting to keep moving forward with the process to that would even be allow you to get pregnant.
correct, right. And so things that I learned along the way from speaking to my surgeon, the MFM, the reproductive endocrinologist. I also spoke with a second surgeon for like a second opinion. I learned that a C-section scar defect happens. It's not malpractice. It happens to women who have C-sections at about 20% for first-time C-sections, but up to 70%, right? So the more C-sections you have, the higher chance you have of getting it. The data is very, very limited right now. according to my surgeon, he said, C-section scar defects have existed as long as C-sections have. You can't predict how a scar will heal, and there's scar tissue, and who knows what could happen, right? However, only in the past few years have the world of medicine been like, oh, this is serious. Maybe we should take this seriously. Maybe we should start collecting data, because a C-section scar defect can do a few things, right? It can potentially change your menstrual cycle, and usually it does. It could cause pelvic pain, it could cause painful intercourse, and it can cause infertility, and it can also cause failed IVF transfers, right? So there are people who don't know they have a defect because maybe, I don't know, their person who's doing the testing isn't as trained, isn't aware, doesn't know to check for these things. And they do a frozen embryo transfer or any embryo transfer, and then it doesn't implant. And it turns out it's because they have a defect and their uterus has liquid in it. And so they could have all the embryos they want, the healthiest, strongest embryos, but they're just not going to lead to a pregnancy. Or if it does, there's a very high chance of a miscarriage. And so you're finding out all of these things and you're realizing, so you're telling me that this is something that is technically a known thing, but nobody told me.
Sure.
Nobody's telling anyone. Nobody's talking about it. And that is so hard. It's so hard to grapple with. It is so hard to accept, because I think in my mind, if it was malpractice, it's almost like, well, okay, yeah, this happened to me. But because it's not malpractice, this is something that actually happens, but nobody talks about it. It almost makes it feel worse. It's like you're hiding this secret that changed my life significantly, that had a huge impact on me, to the point where when I think back, when I had postpartum depression, I was prescribed medication that I chose not to take because we were trying to get pregnant. I didn't know then that I couldn't get pregnant already. Like, the defect was already there. I wasn't going to get pregnant. And so I chose to battle with this depression and go through a really hard time without the medicated help that I really could have helped me, and because of this. And so, it is so hard to accept. It is so hard to accept that there are women who are choosing to have C-sections, right? Who just aren't informed. And again, this is not for or against C-sections. Like, I can't say that I shouldn't have had a C-section. I think my C-section happened, and it wouldn't have happened any other way. And I have a healthy baby, and I'm so happy about that. I wish that at some point my doctor said, hey, in addition to risk of like a uterine rupture in a second pregnancy, there's this other risk that potentially it can cause infertility. And if you're experiencing these symptoms, ask for this exam, ask for this diagnosis, ask for this check. Because if I had known that, I could have, when we first started trying to get pregnant and didn't, I could have saved so many years. I was 35, like I was a lot younger, and we know that age matters, unfortunately, in the reproductive system. And so, yeah, there's a lot of feelings and emotions about all of this. And I'm still going through it now, right? So I did a cycle of IVF in July. And then 3 weeks later, I had my surgery. And then 10 weeks later, I ran the marathon. But right now, I'm still waiting. So this past weekend, I just had some sonograms done to check my uterus. And according to the write-up, I haven't spoken to my surgeon yet, but according to the write-up, it's looking like surgery was successful. And
Yay! Oh, I want to reach to this screen
surgery,
and give you a
yeah.
big hug.
So, and the write-up says that there's no sign of an isthmocele. And so hopefully that means that, 2-3 months we can do our embryo transfer. My surgeon wanted me to wait 6 months for my uterus to fully heal. I'm so emotional right now because for
Of
the first
course.
3 months after surgery, I kinda stopped thinking about a baby at the end of this because we were just trying to get through the surgery, get through the healing, get through all the emotions that sort of surfaced. And now seeing that the results, it was for the first time I was like, maybe we'll have a baby. Like, I think a baby is possible. And it's so interesting. I don't believe in dreams. I don't, I don't do that. But not last night, the night before, I had a dream that I was pregnant and it felt so real. Because I've been pregnant before, I remember the feelings, the emotional, the physical feelings. And I woke up and I was like, oh, that was really nice. Like, that was really nice to feel. So this is where we are right now.
Okay. You don't have to believe in dreams and woo woo, but I absolutely subscribe to this belief system. And I'm finding meaning in that. I am absolutely finding meaning in that. And so I'll hold that for you so you don't have to. Yelena, first of all, I am so incredibly grateful that you're being so vulnerable and sharing what you're going through in real time like this. I know I can feel the emotions. I can empathize. I've obviously never been through this myself, but I think it's really, really hard to talk about something that you want so badly, being a baby, so publicly, not knowing that if all of these things that you're going through, the surgery, the IVF, the appointments are going to get you a baby at the end. I'm so glad to
Yeah,
hear that for the first time just recently and with the surgeon's report, you're feeling that hope again. I hear that hope. One, I hear a lot of gratitude that it worked. Okay, we got
right,
through the big thing and it worked. And now you're kind of at baseline again. Um, I think I'm so sorry for everything you went through. I can understand what you're saying around like, well, if this was wrong, that would at least make it feel like, okay, it wasn't because I didn't know. It wasn't because nobody told me. It was because this wasn't supposed to happen. And I think going back to
right,
the beginning of our conversation and how we met at Mom Congress and the work of 2020 Mom, and there's so many other advocacy organizations, Chamber of Mothers comes to mind, that talk about and advocate for this work because maternal health care is so neglected. And there's so many things that need data, that need research, that need to
right,
be talked about. I mean, to your point of like, how different could your life be if when your doctor is doing your 6-week checkup, hey, let's look into this. This is something to monitor. We're not saying anything did happen, but if XYZ symptoms arise, call us. If you start
right,
feeling this, that way, call us. Just little things to look out for. And I think there's so many women who just don't know I feel like we're gaslit so much by the healthcare system and medical professionals. And I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm just saying that because maybe it's a nuance or it's not an everyday occurrence that it's written off of, oh, well, yeah, these things are kind of unpredictable, or oh, yeah, periods aren't always regular postpartum, or oh, yeah, these
right,
things kind of happen. You're older now, your body's different. And it's like, maybe that is the case, but maybe not. Maybe we should just
right,
ask a few more questions to qualify something in or out because yes, something was wrong and you probably I'm not a doctor, but like it sounds like the fix for this was the surgery. That something
right,
could have happened. Maybe it would have been the same journey, but it wouldn't have taken 6 years to get to this point.
right. And I one of the things that I spoke with the second surgeon for a second opinion just because I was like, I want to cover all my bases before I had the
Totally.
surgery. The surgery is still experimental-ish, right? So here are some things that I've learned along the way, and I've joined a few Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group specifically dedicated to isthmoseals, to C-section scar defects, and it's grown. There's like 3,000 women in there from all over the world, and you wouldn't believe the crazy stories people have, like stories of women reading about this, asking their doctor for a diagnosis, for the test to get diagnosed, and the doctor's like, "This is not real." Right? Like women who are traveling across state lines and country lines just to get surgery. I'm so lucky in New York City, we have access, right? But if you're in the middle of, I don't know, let's say middle America, where maybe you don't have as much access, you're not getting surgery, right? Because this surgery is not taught. It is not, it is not researched. It is something that surgeons are like, we need to figure out a way to help these women. Let's try this, right? So my surgeon has really good success with this surgery. He's had a lot of women who go through it and then have a healthy, successful pregnancy. But, the data is still so limited. So they can't say, like, yes, surgery fixes this for sure. They just don't have that data. So the second surgeon I spoke with, she said that, she believes this will change things in the future, that this will change C-sections in the future. This will change information we're given, but we're not there yet. We're in the early stages. And I could tell you, as somebody who's in the early stages of this thing, it is really hard to be on the emerging end of something. And that's why I'm sharing my story, because people need to know that when I'm having these symptoms and I'm trying to get pregnant, I'm not getting pregnant, like this could be this thing. It's not just because you're 39 or you're having bad luck. Like you had a C-section, this could be a thing. You have to advocate for yourself. And if the first doctor says no, ask them to put it into your chart that you asked for a saline-infused sonogram and they refuse, and find another one, right? Because to diagnose this, it's an MRI or a saline-infused sonogram. But we're in the early stages.
I think it's the hardest part about being a woman and trying to take care of your body, especially in the perinatal period, getting pregnant, being pregnant, postpartum, is the advocacy you have to do for yourself. Like,
Yeah,
I grew up having implicit trust in healthcare that if I had an ailment or a complaint, or I said, this is what I'm experiencing, it would be taken seriously. And
right,
that's actually not the case. I'm so grateful for the healthcare providers that I've had to seek out and find, and who really do invest in your well-being and take your concerns
right.
seriously, because it's not the norm, I found. And and like, I mean, wow, we could get into a whole conversation around how, the the profit side of healthcare and insurance and how much time patients get. But at the end of the day, like, you have to work so hard. And when it comes to birth alone, walking into a hospital setting, it's very difficult as the birthing person to be, despite how you're going to give birth, if you're going to have a vaginal birth, if you're going to have a planned C-section, if you're having induction, like, you are walking into a setting where you are under someone else's care, and you are not
Right,
being seen until you sign your name on the dotted line saying you accept the outcomes of what happened. And I think we are both very like-minded in that we know enough and know how to advocate for ourselves, but it's still very difficult. I mean, my own birth 7 months ago, like, I am still processing all of it because I know how to advocate for myself. It was my 3rd time giving birth. But it's also like, I'm not often at a loss for words, but it's like something I don't have words to put
yeah,
to yet, because trauma feels very heavy, and I don't wanna I'm trying, like, not to assign that to the experience. And there was nothing good about the outcome other than I got my beautiful daughter and she was healthy.
right,
And so it's very difficult to, and especially in your case, knowing so many things that could go wrong. This is why we have to
right.
advocate for ourselves. This is why we have to raise our hands, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that
Right.
way.
It shouldn't. And, and my whole point, what I'm seeking, what I'm hoping is that, like, when I sign my name on the dotted line saying, like, these are the potential outcomes, that I am aware that a potential outcome for a C-section is infertility. Like, that's all I'm asking for, is that we just know so that we have options, right? We have control over how to proceed. Y- Look, from my understanding, there's like some research coming out now saying if a woman, for example, was high risk, like in my situation, I had gestational diabetes, I had amniotic fluids that were going up instead of down at the end, so my uterus was like very stretched thin. um, so there's some research that says like doing double stitching or extra careful stitching that's a little bit stronger can help with healing and preventing anismocele, which like that makes sense, right? Your uterus is already thin to begin with. Let's take some extra care. This summer I spent reading 300 pages of medical records to try to like understand what happened. I know that my C-section was sewn up with the thinnest, most basic stitching, right? Also, what maybe didn't help, and we don't know, is after my C-section, I had preeclampsia half an hour later, and that, prolonged the healing period. I'm sure that had an impact on how my C-section was starting to heal. But again, we don't know any of this because there isn't enough research, right? There's not enough data. We don't know these things. And so I hope that in the future, a lot of times things change because at one point something happened and people had to pay attention to it, and then they had to research it, and then they had to make changes. I hope that this is what happens, right? Like, we realize women have infertility caused by C-sections. And so now we have to figure out how we could have less cases of that and how to proceed with post-op care, right? Like you said, at the 6-week check, or even a month or a year later, let's do a sonogram to see how your C-section healed. Let's do a
Mhm.
saline. Maybe that should be like the standard. Let's do a saline infused sonogram because you had a C-section and we want to check how it's healing, because that's going to make a difference for any future decisions you have. The other thing is every isthmocele may be different in size. Like mine is considered large, so that has worse outcomes. Some will have a very, very small isthmocele that maybe isn't impacting fertility, but maybe, their uterus is thinner, so they could still have a pregnancy, but they'll be monitored more closely. So there are a lot of different things that can happen. And I think it can be hard to say like XYZ because there are so many different variations within this. But variations isn't a reason to not pay attention to it, to not take it seriously, to not study it, to not research, and to not make sure that women don't have to go through this and find out 6 years later, um, and then try to figure out how to like grapple with it, how to find support while at the same time going through IVF and having surgery and feeling like my time is very, very limited now because I'll be 40 this summer.
Well, I know that because you are sharing your story, you are talking very publicly about everything you're going through. You're sharing, bringing to light these things, and this is how the reality is, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is how the data comes. This is how the research comes. This is how it gets more attention. This is how, when other women are experiencing similar symptoms, they say, "I heard Yelena, and hey, doctor, can you please look into this?" So thank you. This is important. This is going your the work that you're doing to share is not going to be unrecognized and not heard. And keep us updated. I You have a couple
Yeah.
months left before your six-month
Yeah.
ability to really try
Right.
again. Um, I I believe in signs. I didn't believe in signs until the past couple of years. So like I said, I'm gonna hold space for the signs that you're receiving. I'm holding on hope that you're gonna have that baby at the end, that your son's gonna have that sibling. And truly, I just can't thank you enough for sharing all of this. And I know it's gonna make a difference.
They I can't thank you enough for giving me the space to share it. Like I said, there is so few people I actually don't know. I know one person that I've met with, like, over Zoom who understands has gone through this because there was a New York Times article and I commented, and she reached out to me from the
Oh,
New York
wow.
Times comment, and she was like, "You don't know me and I don't know you, but we both had this experience." And so we met last week over Zoom and we had, like, this long conversation, um, and it felt so good to talk to somebody who, like we said earlier, right? When we understand each other because we went through postpartum depression, so we understand what that entailed, and this woman understands what I'm going through, and she's on the other end, right? She has the baby she wanted, and I'm still in it, so it was, like, really, really helpful just to hear, like, somebody else gets it,
Comforting.
because
Somebody
it's comforting. Yeah, because people that I talk to in my life, nobody knows what this is. It feels very isolating at times and, like, my mental health really definitely took a dip. Like, I had a really hard week last week, but I'm just trying to give myself grace. I'm still in it right now, and that
Mhm.
can be hard.
What's something that when I've talked to women who are going through IVF, and I'll have a couple more episodes in the spring coming out about this topic. As someone who didn't struggle myself, but like I said at the beginning, have many friends who've been going through this journey, I'm trying to collect little pieces of feedback. Everyone's different. Everyone's style and level of comfort is different. What can you give the audience for if you're in my shoes, the friend supporting someone going through what you're going through, a trying IVF or a secondary infertility journey? Give us some do's and don'ts. What is helpful to say and what is not helpful to say?
Yeah, there's definitely a few things. With IVF specifically, I think what's not helpful is, saying things like, "Oh, what are you gonna do with the leftover embryos?" Like, if you have 4 embryos, you're gonna have 4 babies. Like, that comes from a place of not understanding. That comes from a place also, just like different religions have different views on IVF, and I get that. Like, I never thought that I'd be going through IVF. Like, a year ago, I didn't know. And so I don't know if we have leftover embryos, what we're gonna do. But that's a decision for my husband and I to make together. And it's okay to not have an answer. So that's not helpful, right? What is helpful is, like, sometimes, like, humor. Like, it's okay to wanna make light of something as well. Like, I remember I would, like, text a friend, like, a sarcastic comment, like, "Oh my god," because I was so bloated, like, something with IVF I wasn't expecting. I looked 6 months pregnant. I looked so bloated, and I felt heavy. I had cravings. I felt all of it. So I would, like, text my friend a picture, and she'd be like, "Oh, but you look great." And, like, in the moment, I was, like, texting to be like, "Laugh with me."
Yeah.
Like, I'm already sad as it is, like, laugh with me.
Mhm.
Make me laugh. Like, agree, you know what? You're not gonna make me feel bad. When I say I look pregnant, I already acknowledge that, right? Like, laugh with me. Um, and, you know, something else actually last week, like, I told a friend, I was like, "Yeah, I'm having a really hard time." And what she said that she said something that nobody's ever said to me before, and she goes, "I can see that, and you're gonna be okay." And her saying, like, "I can see that," it felt so good because it was like, yeah, this isn't in my head. I actually am struggling. I am going through a really hard time, and I'm not just in my head about it. Like, somebody else noticed it and acknowledged it, but they know I'll be okay, and I know I'll be okay, but in this moment, like, I'm not, and that's okay. And, yeah, I
Hope
think but it's hard. It's hard to know what to say.
I think that's a really beautiful thing your friend said, though, because I think so often we know that you're hurting and we can't give you what you want, which is a baby. And I think the natural tendency is we just want to take away whatever pain there is by
Yeah.
saying, which comes out as saying the wrong thing. And I think there's something so validating by being able to hold the space of, I can see that this is really hard. You're in it right now. You've gone through it before and you're going to get through this one again, but right now it just kind of sucks. I'm really sorry that, and like
Yeah.
virtual hug. um,
Right. And it's like what you said to me at mile 17, right? You were like, you are doing something really hard. And it was like, wait, you're right. I am. I am. And so it's
the
okay if I'm
acknowledgement.
not right. It's like I may not be at 100% right now, but I'm still doing this thing. I'm still moving forward, you know? And um so yeah, and it's hard. And I feel very lucky and I have to say this. Secondary infertility is very different than infertility with the first time, right? I already have a baby. He's amazing. He's healthy. He's happy. Love him so much. My world is bright, right? There are some who can't even have one and that's all they want. And so I fully acknowledge they're not the same, right? But secondary infertility is still really hard because the plan that you had for your life is sort of gone. Your choice of when to plan your family is taken from you. It's not there anymore and you're sort of out of control. And so it's still really, really hard. I also have to acknowledge that I'm very lucky that I only did one round of IVF and I have healthy embryos. There are women who go through multiple rounds and they don't get embryos, or there are different levels of hard and there are different levels of grief and hardship and sadness. And while I am in my sadness and in my grief and in my hard moment, there is somebody else who has it even harder. And so I think what I want is, a world where we don't necessarily compare our sadness and like, oh, but you already have one, so you don't get two. It's more, we all are going through something really hard. And like, I feel you and I empathize with you and I'm here for you. Um, but yeah, this has been like a whirlwind of hard.
Elaine, I think it is so generous of you of how you just acknowledge, we can all, um, someone else going through something really hard doesn't take away from the hard thing you're going through. And yes, we all have hard things happening in our lives. And I think just that spirit of gratitude that you just shared there, is how we can all get through it together and look out for each other. And so thank you for sharing all of this. Like I said, I know it's going to have an impact on women when they hear your story. I want to end this on a lighter note. um, talk to me, talk to me about what is filling your cup right now.
Oh, so many things. I think obviously my son, right? We're moms. We know like the pure joy that comes from watching them grow, the activities we're going to partake in. We're going to get frozen hot chocolate. We're going to do all these things. And then I make plans for it. So I'm like in the middle of doing that now. So that's definitely filling my bucket.
Okay, wait, I forgot to even tell you about this. You are like, I see the things you do as a mom, and I am like, I could never, I don't know how you do it. Like, you take your son everywhere. You guys are always doing the most fun activities. I feel like living vicariously through you. Like, I am so impressed by the stamina you have to be so present and hands on and fully taking advantage of the city we live in. Like, I feel like we make the most of it in our little neighborhood. I feel like you make the most of New York City in every single borough. And I love that you do that. I love it so much. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah,
Um,
I can't stay home. I'm like, I cannot, I struggle to stay at home. So my son ends up being, everywhere with me because I'm like, we're not going to stay home, but we're going to get 20,000 steps in today going to
yeah.
3 different boroughs.
You do it, and it's incredible. Okay, I also want you to share before we wrap up here. You share so much educational content around running, around coping. It makes me laugh. I feel seen in it. Can you share where they can follow along with your journey?
Yeah, so my Instagram page is momontherun.nyc. It was something different. I recently changed
I
it to
love it.
sort of try to yeah, like try to make it more encompassing of the content I'm trying to put out, where I'm talking about maternal mental health and maternal health, right? We're talking about that, but I'm also talking about being a mom in New York City, and I'm a working mom, and my husband's a firefighter with, like, a crazy schedule, like, what does that look like? I'm also trying to make some, I don't know, hopefully funny reels that I find, like, humorous, you know, and sort of, like, the common thread is, like, running is what keeps me going. Through all of these things, I'm running so that I could do all the other hard things in my life, and in the end, I find joy and love and strength, and it just makes a very fulfilling life.
I absolutely love following along on it. I definitely find it funny. I find it very relatable. Something about starting this podcast for me was to be able to show the multitudes in which women exist. And I feel like we're so often defined by mom or wife or employee or this we get a single identifier and that's how people categorize us, and so it's really important to me to show and talk about the multitudes and different episodes that could be one thing or it could be many things. I find
Right.
your page mom on the run NYC relatable because yes, running's the common denominator that keeps you going, but you show all of it. You show running to work, you show picking up your son, you show how you handle childcare with a husband with a very, very busy schedule. You show all the things you're doing and you show the maternal health journey of it. So I very much appreciate that. Man, this has been a lot. I am so appreciative of you sharing with us. We have gone on quite a journey. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing everything with us. And thank you for being as vulnerable and open with you are. I know that this is going to help women and hopefully the research around a niche. I was going to try and say
Anish, yeah,
ismacile,
Ismacile,
is
yeah,
ismaciles,
Ismacile.
um, going forward.
Agreed. And thank you so much for having me. When I saw that you are doing a podcast, I was like, this is amazing. Like yes, I'm here for it.
Thank you. Yelena, so good catching up with you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Catch Up with Claire. If you did, I would so appreciate if you subscribe, follow, rate, and comment wherever you're listening from. Share it with someone else you think might enjoy listening. This is how I can continue to have these conversations and bring these conversations to you. Until next time, be kind, be brave, and be safe out there.